This is an HR program on demand, a living seed capsule of work life and workplace coming live from a rooftop in Stockholm, Sweden. It's me, Ann-Marie Andrich, and
me, Katarina Berg.
A vodcast, if you like, on HR, straight across the counter. Sponsored by HR, the real deal, HR by HR for HR. Hello, Michael.
Hello.
Welcome.
It's an honor to be here. I'm so happy to be here. I've been waiting for the invite, and I'm finally here in sunny Stockholm talking to you. So I can't wait for this.
Oh, I'm so glad that you're positive.
Yes.
And again, excited to have you join us today. But and I wish that we had sun. I wish.
It is what it is. Rain or shine, we get this done.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's the rooftop. It is in Stockholm.
Absolutely. And it is still beautiful.
The topic is the HRBP role.
Yes.
That is something that I think both you and I are passionate about, but I'm so looking forward to hearing your views on the role.
Sure.
But before we start, Michael Kim, that's your name.
It is.
Exactly.
Yep.
What more can we learn about Michael Kim?
What more? Geez. So, as you know, I've been with Spotify for 7 years. I'm currently living in Sydney right now, heading up HR for Spotify for our what we call our JAPAC and now MENA regions. So looking after everything from Australia, Japan, all of our Southeast Asia markets, including South Korea, our massive country of India. That's going through extreme hypergrowth right now, as well as now taking on our Middle East region and our Sub-Saharan Africa region. So what I like to say it is kind of basically everything on the Eastern Hemisphere. If you're wearing a Spotify logo, you're under my umbrella, no pun intended, from an HR leadership and HRBP support perspective.
That's a huge demographic to cover.
Yep.
Yeah? How do you do that?
You do it by wearing multiple hats constantly. When I think of a market like the US or Europe, I think the volume is there. And of course, it's always a tough job being an HRBP in any of those markets. But in my specific role, it's not about volume as an HRBP as much as it is about complexity. When I think about the markets I support, they're all, number one, culturally very different. So from adapting to their culture, you have to wear a different hat and talk a different tone and, use different stylistic approaches. But also from a business perspective, because it's an emerging market region, they also wildly diversify themselves. Where, for example, in Australia, it's a much more mature market for us. Whereas in India or a market like Indonesia, where we have a team in Jakarta, we're really looking at hypergrowth. So as an HRBP, it's quite exciting for me and my team because 1 minute I'll be doing traditional mature market HRBP stuff, and the next minute I'm working in a startup. And as you know, an HRBP in a startup has wildly different skill sets and focus areas than working for a mature market or a large organization. So not one day is ever the same, but I think the complexity around that is constantly mindful of wearing different hats and adapting your HRBP and people management style to the people you support in those different markets and really honoring that local culture.
Yeah. Great. Very well said, I believe. So, so the HRBP role, are there any, if you were to describe it in general terms, how would you describe it?
It's in general terms, the best way for me to describe it is the HRBP role is the connective tissue to all other centers of excellence within HR that really connects to the business. And that's where I guess the business partnering piece of HRBP comes in. In my opinion, the HRBP is the face and representative of HR to the business, driving the people strategy, and really being their business partner, their counselor, their advisor, and being the subject matter expert on all things people to leaders, business leaders, where that's not their subject matter expertise. I think it's such a critical role because it provides an unbiased um, strategic perspective to help drive our business that our business leaders don't have a lens on, right? So I think the HRBPs have a view of an organization. We look at the health of the organization, we look at the overall organizational design structure, and we constantly make sure that our organizations and team structures are aligned for efficiency. And the other part of an HRBP is we go in and we constantly do a needs analysis for our business and identify blind spots. And what I love about the HRBP role is once you find those areas of development or organizational needs, we then tap into that connective tissue of other centers of excellence, and we partner with them to get the job done. Whether it's a region where learning and development needs to be a focus area, or a region where we're in hypergrowth, where our TA strategy is absolutely critical, or an area where we need to really invest more in diversity and belonging. These are all things that the HRBP can work side by side with the centers of excellence to deliver a one HR aligned strategy for the business without the business having to talk to 500 different people. So it's really very much that important seat at the table that helps advise, counsel, and drive not only our people strategy, but our business strategy as well.
Exactly. And I just love the way that you describe the role, Michael, because this is, I mean, it is such a critical role.
Yep.
It's such an important role, but it's also a very, very difficult role.
Absolutely.
And with that said, that also makes it a lot of fun, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it does. But it is, what I would say, doing this right.
Yep.
Yeah. It is one of the most difficult roles that you can actually have. You mentioned also, you talk about, when you talk about HR business partnering, you talk a lot about the business.
Yep.
Yeah. How critical would you say it is? Now, this is a leading question, I know
Sure.
this. But how critical is it for an HRBP to actually profoundly know the business?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely critical because you can't make your recommendations and guidance around solutions if you don't know the business.
Right.
And I think the more time you spend with the business leaders and embed yourself with the business leaders and look at the metrics and look at the strategy and look at the numbers, you can make better informed decisions on how to tweak and drive your people strategy. Because everything we do at the end of the day needs to support the business in order for them to grow and hit their numbers. Right. So there is a performance element here as well. So if we don't know what their focus areas are, KPIs are, where they need to focus on, and we blindly just provide a, smorgasbord of HR offerings to them that aren't relevant to them, you're going to lose the credibility of that business. Right. And then therefore HR in itself starts becoming a more ineffective organization. So knowing the business, knowing your key stakeholders, building a relationship with your key stakeholders, and most importantly, building a trust with the business and credibility with the business is absolutely incredibly important to be an effective HR business partner. You need to be an influencer in this role, right? We're not business decision makers. That's what the business leaders do. But we have to influence, advise, and counsel and give them the best information possible so they can make the best decision as possible. And you can only do that when you understand the business and you have that credibility with them. I often say, when I think about what a strong HRBP looks like, because it is an incredibly difficult job and not everyone's cut out to be an HRBP, nor should they want to be. But I think one of the key red flags I see within HRBPs when they partner with the business that, I often see, but it's not a good thing, is an HRBP that's overly eager to please the business and become a yes person.
Right.
Right. You also need an HR business partner who understands the business enough, but also understands our people strategy enough to call out where they see gaps in or disagree with or have a contrarian point of view and be able to challenge your business leader.
Correct.
Make them think differently, make them look at a problem differently from your lens versus just saying yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
Because then you're not an HR business partner, you're just someone saying yes to someone and doing everything for them.
And that's another role.
Absolutely. Yes.
That's not the HRBP role.
That isn't the HRBP
And I think
role.
it's important that you stress that out because I think this is also where you know, as a business leader, you need that mirror. You need that someone who will give you the truth that you maybe don't want to hear,
Yeah,
but is necessary because you are leading your people. Right?
exactly.
So,
And you have that in a very unbiased way. And this is why HR doesn't report into the business, because
very
you
good.
aren't biased. You aren't pressured into agreeing with them because you want them to, look at your performance and they're the decision makers of your performance. That's exactly the reason why the model is the way it is for most companies, where HRBP sits outside of that. So you have that power and that ability to counsel without the fear of retaliation, without the fear of, if I don't agree with him, then he's just going to fire me and find someone else, or she's going to fire me and find someone else. Um, and that's where, you have the support of your HR organization to have the confidence to push back, and disagree, and, show different points of view.
Yeah, and thank you for pointing that out. Also, the importance of that functional reporting line,
Yeah.
and what kind of benefits it is to actually report into the function rather
Yep.
than outside of the HR function. A very relevant point. Now, you also said this: not everyone should be in HR, an HRBP, because it is a challenging role, and you also need to understand the role and the strong business partnering side of it. How do you onboard your HRBPs at Spotify?
Yeah. I think that's a really interesting question, because in my past life, and I've always started, early days of my HR career on an HR generalist and HRBP track. But I've always done it for US corporations. And, coming to Spotify and being with Spotify for 7 years now, and reflecting on my previous experiences and thinking back to my own onboarding experience, um, one thing I could confidently say is HRBPs in the US, for example, have been groomed and trained very differently than HRBPs and the expectations of an HRBP at Spotify. So when you ask how we onboard our HRBPs here in Spotify, especially if we hire US HRBPs or JAPAC HRBPs, the first thing I always think of and say is take the time to listen and learn our culture and understand how to do it the Spotify way. Because I think the biggest trap for onboarding of HRBPs are HRBPs that want to come here, prove that they could add value quickly, and think like, you hired me, I need to prove to you that I could do this job now. And then have that mentality of, well, at my old company, I did this. So here's a great idea I think Spotify can use, right? And what I've experienced in my own onboarding, that I always am empathetic to new HRBPs, and what I say is, you really have to go through a phase of unlearning what you've been groomed to do and start getting very comfortable doing things that would be the opposite of what you normally would do at your old company. Understand our people strategy and how we approach things the HR way, and then you're going to be onboarded successfully into the Spotify HRBP family. And I think what's super cool about our people strategy that we've been consistent with for 7+ years now is that it's no longer becoming like, back then it was a very unique Spotify way of doing HR. No other company has been doing it around growth mindset, our philosophy of performance development over performance management. That was a very Spotify, or maybe Swedish, way of doing it, right? But now, as the world evolves and millennials are getting older, Gen Zers are taking over, everything that's happening in society right now, the Spotify way is actually the new global way of thinking, where you have massive US corporations starting to shift their people strategy to look somewhat very similar to what ours is from 7 years ago. Because that's what the new generation of employees want. They want flexibility. They want autonomy. We've learned a lot through COVID. They want, a company that is people focused first. They want a company that doesn't only care about salary, but cares about total reward and benefits and family forming benefits, regardless if you're ready to start a family or not. They're looking to join companies like Spotify. And I think a large part of that has to do with our people strategy. So from an onboarding perspective, I think it's becoming easier as well, because the world is picking up onto our strategy,
Right.
and it makes sense for them. And I think from a talent attraction perspective, we're getting some of the best HRBPs around the world because they want to leave that traditional way of doing HRBP work where, let's be honest, in my experience, traditional HRBP work in my previous employers was about protecting the company first. At Spotify, we've always said we protect our people first,
Right.
right? And I think HRBPs around the world, working for those type of companies that I used to work for, are understanding that if they come to a company like Spotify, they can really start doing what they're passionate about again. Because everyone asks me, why do you join Spotify? Why did you join HR? And I always ask people that too. The answer is always the same. I want to help people.
Right.
At the core of it, it's I want to help people. And at Spotify, what I love about the HRBP role is you actually get to do that. So I think the onboarding for our HRBPs are extremely complex. It takes time. It takes a lot of rethinking and adjustment on how you think and approach problems and ER investigations and tough situations. But it's a rewarding experience as well.
Yeah.
So I think the onboarding experience for HRBPs is a good one, but a complex one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. And you said so many good things there. Unlearn, relearn,
Yep.
and grow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Michael. You also mentioned, and when we started this conversation, you mentioned your geographical remit, and you talked about, in some markets they're more mature, in others they're a bit immature, or scaling, and that also affects the role of the HRBP.
Sure.
Any thoughts on what would be like? How do you do HRBP? How do you do HR business partnering in a mature market versus in a more
When I first got shipped out to that side of the world, I reflect back 4 years later on what my biggest challenge was around being an effective HR business partner. And for me, it all starts with culture. And when you work at Spotify and you're in Sweden at the mothership, or in New York, where it's a massive building, we have thousands of employees. Culture is there from a Spotify perspective just because of the numbers, right? You're there every day. You're embedded with so many other Spotifyers. D team is here, Daniel's here, etc.
And the D team is your leadership team.
Executive leadership team,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
But when you get on a plane and you go to our Australia office that has 50 employees, or if you go into our Southeast Asia office in Singapore that has 100 employees, which is still relative, it's big for JAPAC, but small relative to New York or Stockholm. In many ways, it actually becomes more complex because it becomes much more of a family. And I think, being an HRBP on that side of the world, working for a satellite regional offices, where everyone knows each other's names, regardless of what group or function you're sitting in, right? We're still Team Australia. We're still Team Singapore, regardless if I work in finance or sales. And we can be because we're a smaller, tight-knit family. That builds really strong culture. And that builds local culture, which I think is great. But what I've realized the biggest challenge of being an HRBP in JAPAC is how do you create a balance between local and company culture?
Exactly.
Because in Japan, I think it's great that we need to honor the traditions of working in a Japanese workplace. We need to honor their unique nuances and cultural nuances. But we also call out very clearly that we do not want to be a Japanese company in Tokyo. We want to be Spotify in Tokyo. So the trick there is, how do we not lean so much to the left, where next thing you look at our team in Japan, it mirrors Toyota, right? And that culture, because we're not Toyota.
Right.
And I'm not saying that in a good way or a bad way, we're just simply not. But the tricky part for me as an HRBP and my team was, how do we create that balance where you can be Japanese working in Tokyo, but still feel connected and included and belonging to working for a Swedish company that is Spotify. Right. So how do we balance and inject Spotify culture with local culture to help drive our people strategy? And we have to pick and choose at times as well. I think a tangible example of that is again, going back to Japan, looking at our parental leave policy. Right. At Spotify, we give everyone, male, female, mother, father, 6 months fully paid. In Japan, if you're a male executive or working in the office space, taking 6 months off of parental leave is career suicide and a cultural no-no in many ways in the Japanese culture for men. And we have several of our male employees in Japan who felt very uncomfortable taking advantage of our parental leave program because it didn't fit their cultural norm and they were worried about stereotyping and what it would do for them. This is a good example of when we leaned into those employees and said, we understand you're Japan, but you still work for Spotify.
Right.
So when you walk through those doors at Spotify, we're not comparing ourselves to the Japanese cultural norm around parental leave. We're ensuring that you have the equal rights of other Spotifyers around the world.
Right.
So because you're at Spotify, taking 6 months leave is perfectly normal. Don't feel uncomfortable. Don't only take 2 weeks or 2 months and let the rest go. Please take the full amount. And, once we lead by example and encourage them to do so, future fathers in Japan now have no issue taking 6 months.
Right.
But it's about injecting that Spotify culture to create that balance so people feel included and remind themselves, yeah, I'm thousands of miles away from Sweden, but I'm still working for Spotify.
Right.
And I think as an HRBP, continuing to drive that culture and remind people that they work for a great company like Spotify, but they're on the other side of the world, me included, is one of the, an interesting differentiating factor of my role as an HR business partner versus my peers who sit in US or Sweden.
Right.
Yeah.
What a very, very good example.
Yep.
And also sharing, how you are, putting your culture in the forefront and, sticking to being a people first company and how that, but again, it's not easy.
No, it's not.
You're creating a change,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
And it's constantly evolving.
It's constantly
as well.
evolving.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So the work never ends.
It never, but that's the beauty.
And you're never
also.
finished.
You're never
Yeah.
finished.
Yeah.
That's the beauty, but that's also the challenge, right?
Exactly.
But again, that's why we love HR.
Absolutely.
We love HR. Michael, it's been such a pleasure, and we can continue this conversation for hours and hours. And so let me just put it out there. We will invite you back.
I can't wait to come back, Emery. So great to see you.
We will invite you back, and hopefully with a bit of sun.
Yes.
But for now, I think, the rain is really catching up here. So
Yeah.
Would you be ready to close the session with me?
Let's do it.
With the 3 things.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's go. Let's go.
All right.
Stay safe.
Stay strong, stay active.
Very good.
Okay.
And then the last one.
We have to.
We do it together.
Can we do the first one first
Yeah.
and then do the, because I'm
Yeah.
going to need, okay.
Yeah.
All right. 1, 2, 3.
Idemo,
Idemo,
dalje.
Dahlia.
Very good.
Okay.
Dalje.
Dahlia.
Yeah. Idemo, dalje.
Okay. Idemo, Dahlia.
And then together.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Idemo,
Idemo,
Dahlia.
Dahlia.
Michael Kim.
Well, we have to do the stay safe, stay strong.
You did it. But you did it.
No, but we have to do it together, right?
No, you do it.
It's just me. Okay.
Yeah.
Can I do it again? I want to do it with more enthusiasm. When I did it, I was doing it more like, is that right?
But you were so good.
Stay strong, stay active.
Stay strong, stay active. No, stay safe.
Stay strong, stay active.
Yes.
Okay. Stay safe, stay strong, stay active. There you go. All
You
right.
did it.
Yes.
I love the ending because it was like training on the job.
Yeah. No, but the only reason why is you're right. It's my sign off in my crisis management. So people are like, they don't know, he doesn't know his own sign off. That's why I'm like a little bit
But it was
nervous
so
about
good. So you and I talk.
Yeah. Talk.
They film us, right?
Yep.
We have no clue that they're filming
Yep.
us. Yeah. And then we do the 3, and we say la la la, and
Yep.
let's do the 3 things. Then this is the critical part.
Okay.
Yeah. So we move, and we look into that camera.
Okay. Got
Yeah?
it. And then it's stay
safe,
safe,
stay strong,
stay strong,
stay active.
stay active. But we could take a couple of shots at it,
We
right?
could definitely
Yeah.
do
Okay.
that.
Stay strong,
And
stay
actually,
safe.
that makes
stay
it
active.
more fun if
Yeah.
we do.
Okay. Okay. And then you're definitely gonna have to remind me of the Croatian saying before.
Idemo dalje.
Yeah.
Yeah. Idemo
Idemo.
dalje.
Okay, we're gonna have to do that later.
Yes, we will.
All right. Right now I'm just focusing on my HRBP answers.
You should just focus
Yeah,
on that.
yeah.
The rest, we will take it as it
Okay.
goes. Yeah.
Cool.